This lecture is about the first kind of classification of governments. You can classify governments in different ways by looking at different characteristics of them. And this characteristic we're looking at today is how many rule. So how many people in the country or city or state or whatever it is that is being governed, how many of them have the opportunity to govern? And so throughout history, that's been answered in a variety of ways, but the most common ways are, there's 3 different ways. And one is that one person gets to rule, or one person is in charge of the government. Another one is that a few people rule, like 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe, like up to 10. And then the other option is all people rule. All rule. And we have different names for those in political science. When one person rules, we call that autocracy. Autocracy. And this sort of makes sense because the word auto means one. And the word kratia, can't remember if this one's Latin or Greek, but it means rule. So one rules. And we have actually then 2 different kinds of autocracy. So let's divide those out. The first kind, you might think about this for a second, see if you can predict. Pause the video if you need to, and then come back. The first kind of autocracy that's been the most common throughout history is a monarchy. A monarchy. And we know this has to do with having a king or a queen. And interestingly, this word also means one rule. So mono means one, and archy means rule. And then the other kind of government in which one person rules is called a dictatorship. All right, and we're going to talk some more about those later. But for right now, let's go ahead and finish out our top primary divisions up here. So if one person rules, that's an autocracy. If a few people rule, that's called an oligarchy. An oligarchy. And we just said archy means rule. And you might guess that this root word olig means a few. Okay, so in an oligarchy, just a few people rule. And there are 2 main kinds of oligarchies. One is called an aristocracy. And if you like Disney, this might remind you about the Aristocats movie. And then the other kind of oligarchy is called a timocracy. Timocracy. Okay, and again, we've got kratia, these are both mean rule. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about these later and what exactly makes the difference between them. But then finally, our last category, we have autocracy means one rules, oligarchy means a few rule, and for all rule, we call that democracy. Democracy. And you might guess, well, you should know by now that the word kratia means rule, and demos means the people. So democracy means the people rule. The people rule. And guess what? There are 2 main kinds of democracies. One is called direct democracy. And the other one is called a republic. But there are some alternative names for these. A republic can also be known as, aka, A representative, about ran out of room, democracy. It can also be known by another name, an indirect democracy. And this one's just putting it opposed to a direct democracy. This one's direct, this one's indirect. And actually, direct democracy also has another name. It's also known as a pure democracy. Okay. Now, what I'd like you to do is to take a little break, maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and then come back and hide this paper, and on a different piece of paper or on a whiteboard or something, see how much of this mind map or this diagram you can redo from memory. If you can't remember a whole word, but you can remember what it starts with, put every single thing that you can remember. If you can't remember any words, but you can remember where all the arrows were, put that, because the arrows are just as important in this diagram as the words are. Okay, so when we come back, after you do that, we'll go ahead and take a look at these subdivisions of our classification of governments by how many rule. And actually, one more thing, this is commonly called, we call these the classic forms of government. Classic forms. Classic forms of government. But this is the question that those forms are answering. How many people participate in ruling the government? All right, done.